Abraham, I appreciate the time to visit with you this afternoon. As you go along the path of study, as I have gone along the path of study over numerous decades, I inevitably came to the point of saying, well, I can understand the non-physical, but as I got to the point of understanding that it is really a re-remembering that we do to get to that point of understanding the non-physical and allowing that just to flow through as you have so pointed out, I begin to question the physical. And so in my quest to understand better the physical and how we were actually sourced or created, my studies led me to some information that was compiled by a fellow by the name of Zecharia Sitchin and the interpretation of the Sumerian records recorded on what they call cuneiform. His interpretation of what actually occurred was that we were actually genetically engineered from two species. The human being is the only species that is not native to the planet Earth. The hominoid, which was a species that they can catalog that was native to planet Earth, was supposedly crossbred or genetically engineered with a species from what he refers to as the 12th planet, or the terminology they use is the planet Nibiru. And when these folks occupied planet Earth for some period of time doing the things that they were doing here, they needed a slave society to do the work that they were doing. So they created or genetically engineered the human being. And as that aspect of their creation got out of hand, they chose to leave the planet and leave us to our own destiny, I guess. So my question is, from your non-physical perspective, can you give me some insight or some perhaps elaboration on that aspect of our creativity as a human being?
Physical man continues to do the following. He stands where he stands, not able to see very far into his past. Actually, you're better at seeing into your future than you are understanding much more than your immediate past. And then, from that limited perception, working very hard to explain how you got here. And the stories that you come up with are remarkable.
But not necessarily untrue.
Well, here is the thing. We would not call anything not valid, because anything that you set your attention upon with enough clarity and enough time, you make your reality. But we have not seen interplanetary interaction. We see interplanetary vibrational interaction all the time. We are having some of that now. In other words, as we project thought here, we are not standing upon your planet while we project the thought. And so, the expansion, let's start with where you are now, just as a sort of basis. So here you are, having your experiences with one another and giving birth to continual new ideas. And source energy responding to your desires and assisting in whatever is necessary for the fulfillment of the idea. And it has always been thus. We talk about how the contrast is the basis of this expanding universe. So it's not too difficult to sort of trace back to an earlier time and understand that even when there was far less than has now occurred, that there were still consciousness having experience, and from the experience that they were having, concluding new desires. And so the evolution of your planet and the evolution of your species continues, where man always has a difficult time bridging this gap is that you keep thinking in terms of there's this physical world and there's this non-physical world. And somebody must be doing something in a physical context in order to expand what is a physical context. In other words, it's hard to realize that there was thought, and then there was thought form, and then there was manifestation. And so it comes around really, really often where people who are interpreting this non-physical energy are wanting to make some bridge that's easy to associate through the human way of looking at things to explain how in other words, people would be more comfortable in believing that the human species got here by spacecraft as they were flown in from some other planet, or as seeds at least were flown in, than that you are the natural evolution of consciousness that took place. You see what we are getting
yes,
at?
but let me see if I can understand this. That natural evolution of consciousness could have occurred through this other vehicle.
Of course it could, because thoughts are everywhere.
Okay.
But the thing that we heard from you, in other words, it makes it sound as if, and many believe this, in other words, there are lots of different versions of this, and many of them come through what you would call religions. There are many different versions of this, but almost all of them say that something outside of us is responsible for that which we are. And we're wanting to say that something outside of you is not responsible for that which you are. That which you are, which is source energy expressing in this physical experience, is responsible for the expansion of that which you are. In other words, we want to say to you that you are source energy that is focused in this physical body, and that you have the ability to continue to be, rather than say that you are some species that some intelligence outside of you is manipulating. That's the difference.
Okay, and I'm really not implying that. If I didn't mean to, if I did.
So what is it that you want from us about this? Because
this is the core of my question.
Yes.
If in fact we could have evolved that way, or were created that way, and there were some limitations put on our chromosomes
by
or
who?
our brain.
By who? That's the thing we want to hear from you. That's that outside thing that we're hearing from you.
Yes, exactly. And I'm just taking it on that premise that if that was the original intent
well,
of
it can't
creation,
be, because there is nothing outside of you that is manipulating your chromosomes. That's the sticker in this.
Okay, well, let me move on to my question then. If I've done traditional meditation for about 30 years, maybe 32 years, and recently have switched to a different type of meditation, a program called Holosync, which uses an inducement of frequencies that your brain reach, whether you're at beta or alpha or theta, and get out into the delta area, which is where you want to be in meditation, to supposedly open up and tune in and tap in and turn on, or whatever you say. Okay, and this is a synthetically generated form of meditation, but clinically has the same but significantly stronger results or faster results than traditional meditation. So in looking in light of the fact that...
are you able to convey your desire to the facilitator, or does the facilitator...
On the initial get-go, it's a scientifically generated tone that corresponds with the level of tone that you generate in traditional meditation.
And when you sit to experience such a thing, what is the intent that you hold?
My intent is to expand my capacity to be able to receive. So
can that intention be responsible for the attraction of the process that brings that about? In other words...
well, you would hope so.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it is still your intention expanding?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, yes. But the intention being that with today's society being the way it is for me, I don't have 10 or 12 hours a day that I can sit in meditation.
Oh, we would not encourage more than 15 minutes.
Yeah, and traditionally I did 15 to 20 minutes. This program runs 30 minutes to an hour because of the degradation of the levels that you have to experience to get down into the delta realm. But my question is that as we progress scientifically, as you so aptly pointed out, and Jerry's mentioned with what's happening in our world today, would it not be conceivable that something from a technological standpoint like this could be implemented to hasten our growth and our openness and our awareness to receive more and become, in fact, more in tune with source energy?
Certainly.
Than to take several lifetimes perhaps to do it, or years, or
we
whatever.
believe that there will be endless tools that will be available to you that will come in response to your specific desire. Yes.
Okay. And do you see anything on the horizon specifically that would or would not be advantageous for us as a group to embrace, or it just depends on where you are in consciousness?
It depends on where you are, and
Okay.
the one clarification that we like to offer is that any tool that you use leaves you then needing the tool, and in that needing of someone else or something else, there is a little bit of loss of freedom. And anytime you are co-creating with any other, then their vibrational intentions become part of the mix. But co-creating is a wonderful thing.
Okay.
And so...
And I questioned that initially, and I said, what would be the results of that? And clinically, supposedly, unlike I'm a runner, and if I go out and run 5 miles, I feel good. If I try to run 7 miles, I tire very much. Unlike that, with what you do supposedly with the brain waves, you don't become tired once you've expanded to a certain level. This makes sense to me intellectually. It feels good when you do it.
Well, like everything that we've been talking about here today, so as you think about what you want, and you believe that you have the ability to bring yourself into a relaxed state and achieve whatever you want, then you bring yourself into a relaxed state and you achieve whatever you want. But if you want something that you do not believe you can achieve efficiently or effectively on your own, then you might say, I'm looking for a tool that will make that happen. And you may find such a tool that just feels like it clicks into place for you. So a tool that is just exactly right for you might be a tool that isn't right for someone else because it feels...
It's not where they are.
It's not where they are, or it feels burdensome, or it costs too much money, or...
Whatever.
Or they worry about someone else's involvement in their experience. In other words, there really is no right or wrong to anything. We encourage you to be clear about what you are wanting and trust that the universe will deliver to you a steady stream of facilitators of all fashion that are just exactly right for you. And what sometimes happens with our physical friends is they want us to validate, or they want everyone to agree. And we say, you're not ever going to find anything that everyone agrees on. And we are just more sticklers, and we say that because you find us a little bit... Esther said in the early days, a friend came to her who was aware that she was receiving, and she had a display of crystals, and she said, these crystals will make you more receptive. They will make your vortex open more easily. They will make it possible for your vortex to remain open longer. You will have a better experience while your vortex is over. And Esther said, Abraham, if this is all true, which one should I choose? And we said, if this is all true, get the biggest one.
Of course.
And so Esther is looking at it and considering, and then we said to Esther, now of course you must remember you will have to take that everywhere you go. In other words, if this tool is all that you say that it is, now your relationship with your open passageway has changed, because now there is something else that you've introduced to it. And when we said that to Esther, it suddenly did not feel like the tool. And so it depends, there is no right or wrong in it. In other words, we think it is something that will be very beneficial for some, of no value to others, and not helpful at all to others.
Good. Well, I appreciate that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, indeed. Now what?